Margaret Hayes had worked at Miller's Diner for 17 years. She was 53, with silver threading through her blonde hair that she always pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her hands showed the honest wear of decades spent carrying plates and refilling coffee cups. She knew every regular by name, remembered how they took their coffee, asked about their grandchildren. The diner sat on the corner of Maple and Fifth, its warm windows glowing against the December cold. Margaret had seen the neighborhood change over the years, young families moving in, old shops closing, new ones opening. Through it all, Miller's remained constant, a refuge of hot meals and familiar faces, a moment of reflection. On that particular Thursday evening, snow had been falling since morning. The kind of gentle, persistent snow that transforms the world into something quieter, softer. Margaret was working the evening shift, her sensible black shoes squeaking slightly on the checkered linoleum as she made her rounds. That's when she noticed the boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. He sat huddled on the bench just outside the diner's entrance, wearing a gray coat that looked too thin for the weather. His brown hair was damp with melting snow, and he kept his arms wrapped tightly around himself, trying to stay warm. Margaret watched him through the window as she cleared table 6. The boy wasn't begging, wasn't causing trouble. He was just sitting. But there was something about the way he held himself. Small, folded inward, trying to take up as little space as possible. That tugged at her heart. A soft sigh. Maternal concern she'd raised 2 boys of her own. They were grown now, with families scattered across different states. She didn't see them as often as she'd like, but she understood. Life moves forward. Still, sometimes she missed those years. The scraped knees she bandaged. The nightmares she soothed. The simple act of making sure her children were fed and warm and safe. This child looked like he needed someone to care. Margaret glanced at Mr. Miller behind the counter. He was 65, counting the days until retirement, and had grown increasingly particular about the rules. No loitering, no free meals. The profit margins were tight, he always said, tighter every year. But the boy was shivering. A pause. A decision made, Margaret took her break 20 minutes later. She ordered a bowl of chicken soup, a grilled cheese sandwich, and a hot chocolate, paying for it with her own money from her apron pocket. She carried it outside carefully, the steam rising in the cold air. "Hello there," she said gently, sitting down beside the boy on the bench. "My name is Margaret. I noticed you've been sitting out here a while. You must be cold." The boy looked up at her with cautious eyes. He had that wariness that children develop when life hasn't been kind, when adults have let them down before. "I'm Tommy," he said quietly. "Well, Tommy, I thought you might be hungry. Would you like some soup? It's warm, and it's very good. Our cook, Rosa, makes it from her grandmother's recipe. Emotional warmth, compassion." Tommy hesitated, then nodded. His hands trembled slightly as he took the bowl, whether from cold or hunger or emotion, Margaret couldn't tell. Probably all 3. She sat with him while he ate, not saying much, just being present. The snow continued to fall, softer now, like a blessing. Tommy ate slowly at first, then faster, as if he couldn't quite believe the food was real and might disappear. "Where's your mother?" Margaret asked gently after a while. "She's working. 2 jobs. She gets home late." Tommy's voice was small but steady. "I'm supposed to wait at the library, but it closed early today." "Snow day." Margaret nodded, understanding, filling in the gaps. A single mother working herself to exhaustion. A child trying to be good. Trying not to be a burden. Waiting in the cold because he had nowhere else to go. A moment of connection. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You're a brave boy, Tommy. Your mother is lucky to have you." They sat together until Tommy finished eating, until some color returned to his cheeks, until his shivering stopped. Then Margaret walked him to the public library branch 2 blocks away, which had reopened, and made sure he was settled safely inside before returning to work. She was 45 minutes late coming back from her break. A shift in tone, tension rising, Mr. Miller was waiting, his face red with anger. "Where have you been?" We had a rush. Tables went unserved. And I saw you take that food outside. Did that kid pay? I paid for it, Mr. Miller, with my own money. That's not the point. His voice rose, drawing looks from the few remaining customers. You can't just give food away, feed every stray that wanders by. You're here to work, not run a charity. This is exactly the kind of soft-headed nonsense that's killing this business. Margaret stood quietly, her hands folded in front of her. She'd known this might happen. She'd done it anyway. Calm acceptance, dignity, Mr. Miller. That child was cold and hungry. He was alone. I couldn't just leave him there. Then you can leave here. You're fired, Margaret. 17 years or not, I can't have employees who don't follow the rules. Clear out your locker. The diner fell silent. A few customers shifted uncomfortably. Rosa appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face stricken. But Mr. Miller was the owner, and his word was final. Margaret nodded slowly. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. She collected her purse from her locker, said goodbye to Rosa and the other staff, who'd become like family over the years. As she walked out into the snow, she felt, not regret exactly. Sadness, yes. Uncertainty about how she'd pay next month's rent. But also something else. A quiet peace that came from knowing she'd done the right thing. Gentle transition, time passing. The next 3 weeks were difficult. Margaret applied to restaurants across the city, but jobs weren't easy to find for women over 50. Too old, they said without saying it. Too expensive. Too set in their ways. Her savings dwindled. She ate simply, turned the heat down low, wore extra sweaters. Her sons offered to help, but she hated being a burden. She'd always been the one taking care of others. A moment of hope, then came the call. Ms. Hayes, this is Jennifer Park from Greenfield Restaurant Group. We'd like to interview you for a position at one of our locations. Would you be available tomorrow morning? Margaret's heart lifted. Greenfield was one of the largest restaurant companies in the region, upscale places with real benefits, retirement plans. She hardly dared to hope. The interview was at a beautiful restaurant downtown, all warm wood and soft lighting. Ms. Park was professional but kind, asking thoughtful questions about Margaret's experience. Her approach to customer service. You come highly recommended, Ms. Park said, smiling. Actually, let me have someone else speak with you. A pause. Revelation approaching. A man entered the office, mid-40s, dressed in an expensive suit, but with kind eyes and an easy manner. Something about him seemed familiar, though Margaret couldn't place it. Ms. Hayes, he said, extending his hand. I'm David Chen. I'm the CEO of Greenfield Restaurant Group. I wanted to meet you personally. Margaret shook his hand, confused. I'm honored, Mr. Chen, but I don't understand. Several weeks ago, I was having dinner near Miller's Diner when I witnessed something through the window. I saw a waitress, you, taking food to a child in the cold. I saw you sit with him, care for him. I saw you fired for that kindness, emotional recognition. David Chen's voice grew softer. Ms. Hayes, I grew up not far from here. My mother worked 3 jobs to support us after my father died. I spent many cold evenings waiting outside closed libraries, trying to stay warm. I remember what it feels like to be that invisible child hoping someone might notice, might care. He paused, his eyes bright. I also remember the people who did notice. The small kindnesses that cost them something but gave me everything. Those moments taught me what kind of man I wanted to be, what kind of company I wanted to build. Margaret felt tears welling up. She blinked them back, but they came anyway. Warmth. Validation. We need people like you. Ms. Hayes. People who understand that our business isn't really about food. It's about caring for people, making them feel seen and valued. That's what creates community. That's what lasts. He slid a folder across the desk. I'd like to offer you a position as regional training manager. You'd help train our staff across all our locations, teach them not just how to serve meals, but how to serve people. The salary is considerable, and the benefits include full health coverage and a pension plan. Margaret opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers swam before her eyes, more than she'd ever made, more security than she'd dared to dream. I don't know what to say. Say yes. David Chen smiled. Say you'll help me build something better. Joy, gratitude, yes, Margaret whispered. Yes, absolutely yes. They talked for another hour, about values and vision, about the kind of culture they wanted to create. David shared his own story, his years of struggle, how he'd built his company on the principle that profit and compassion weren't enemies but partners. "By the way," he said as Margaret was leaving, "I tracked down Tommy and his mother. We've arranged for after-school care, and his mother now has a single, better-paying job with us. She's an excellent cook, as it turns out. I thought you'd want to know?" Deep emotional satisfaction. Margaret did cry then, not bothering to hide it. She thought about the chain of kindness, how one small act, costing her everything,